Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome back. It's July 8th here, Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni. I'm joined by Matthew Betz and Mike Wright.
The Hitman is back.
What's up, party people?
Mike, how was vacation, dude? We missed you.
Dude, it was very needed. Your boy was burnt out. Visited the final frontier of Alaska.
Beautiful.
Just making sure we still have that part of our territory.
Yes.
Mike reclaimed it when he was there.
It still belongs to the great US of A. All Canadians were groin kicked.
Just you.
I didn't meet any. I didn't run into any
Just
Canadians.
all of them in a line.
It's like,
Mike.
what are you doing over here? This is America.
Nice. I'm glad you're making sure that that's still part of what we do here in the US of A.
That's right.
Were you
We
you were
let
there
the
on 4th of
Canadians-
July?
I was. So I was still in, but barely.
Okay.
I mean, it's just what's going on up there? It's not connected, and it's like Hawaii. Okay, it's an island. Puerto Rico, it's a territory. But Alaska is just like gigantic, and we were like, "Give me that,
Need it. Get it.
give me that."
I gotta like
Hold
that.
on, there's gold in them there hills. Give me that.
I tried to explain that to my kids, just showing them on a map. I was like, this over here, that's ours. That place right there.
It's way bigger. Like the maps
Right.
distort it. It's crazy big.
That's cool. The whole family, did they like it?
They did. We had a good time. Saw some moose.
Moose
Out there,
are cool.
Saw some.
Is that singular
Some,
or plural? I can't tell.
It was both.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
We saw some mama moose with their babies. That was a good time. Saw a bald eagle
Beautiful. Majestic.
flying, just freedom everywhere.
America.
Man, you felt even more American than us and what we did. Just shoot off stuff in the South and sweat our butts off. But
Yeah, and that's a wild thing about Alaska, because right now the sun doesn't go down. So like when you're out at midnight, it looks not unlike a regular 6 p.m. And you're just like, oh well, the sun is still out, which means no darkness, which means no fireworks. So that's not really a thing up there. However, we found out, we didn't get to see it because we learned about it too late. Apparently there's an area of Alaska where they just launch cars off a cliff.
wow.
Now that is
And
American.
that's what they do instead of fireworks. They just take beaters and launch them.
That could be fun.
It's really funny because Alaska, like they're, it's the last frontier. It's very environmental up there. Like we got to make sure the animals have, the proper space and everything. And they're like, yeah, but what if we launch cars off of a cliff?
There's no regulations for that. Just go for it.
It's a wild place up there.
Our Alaskan listeners right now are like, yeah, that's us. That's who we
Oh,
are.
Yeah.
They were all
So-
at the car launch.
They were
So
there.
Waving their American flags. Yeah, it was.
It's a wild crossover between Dynasty, fantasy football, and Alaskan listeners launching cars. Great subset. We're
I
finding.
mean, to live in a place where it's either just all sun all the time or it's just darkness. And people got there, and humans got there, and they're like, yeah, this is the place for me. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, even I tell people that all the time about Phoenix. I was like, I don't know if this place was supposed to be inhabited.
No. Phoenix was the people on the way to get gold in California, and they quit. Like, well, it's good enough.
It's fine, whatever. We'll just try to survive here and tell everybody else about it. On this episode, we are going to be debating Dynasty wide receivers. I've kind of looked at our Dynasty rankings, combed through them again after the NFL draft, after a couple of months, and tried to put them into tiers. And so I'm going to kind of debate that with you guys. You can call me out if you want, but at the end of the day, we're going to call out Mike because they're his rankings and Andy's rankings and Jason's rankings. So they're the ones that you can point to. They're the ones that you can bring the pitchforks for if you want to. But try to tier them out, see if you guys agree or disagree, and then
I see you kept one player inside of tier 6. You could have been rude and moved him down to tier 7, but you didn't want the mob coming.
We'll talk
for you.
about it. We'll talk about it when we get there.
I mean, I was kind of being nice for you guys' sake.
Yeah, I know.
That's fine. So we'll talk about those. We do have something in the Ultimate Draft Kit that just went live as we turn the calendar to July. It is the Draft Analyzer. So if you want to take a look at your Dynasty team, you can make sure to get Andy, Mike, and Jason's grades, kind of see your weakness compared to the rest of the league, how it kind of lines up, and some areas you could probably look at. I know last couple of weeks we've talked about Dynasty benches and the way that you can kind of make some trades over the last couple of weeks to kind of move things. So I've actually looked at a couple of my teams, and one of my teams is in our Dino Junior League that I've gone from like last year, I think I was 11th or 12th in the grades. I'm like middle of the pack now. I'm like moving up.
Hey,
no, my bench is terrible.
For you.
Terrible bench grade. But my starters are actually looking up.
Love that, Kyle. Hang the banner. Put it in the draft analyzer. Hang the banner, middle of the pack. That's exactly where you want to be in Dynasty. You've said it for years on this show. If you're middle of the pack, you're in the right spot. So good job, dude.
I think we said if you're middle of the pack, you could compete, which is not something I could say for a while. So.
But also on a recent episode, we did talk about the fact that on that team, Rico Dowdle is your RB1.
Whoa.
So I'm sure the draft analyzer told you, hey, buddy, get some running backs.
Yeah, it wasn't great. So ultimatedraftkit.com if you want to look at the draft analyzer. It's just updated. It's also an app. And then one more little plug here we got to give about the Megala show. And little's probably the wrong word to use, Mike. Should be a big plug.
It is mega. It's about as mega as it can possibly get. It is the Fantasy Footballers Live. It's the Megala show. It's presented by SiriusXM and sponsored by GMC and PetSmart. It's all going down Friday, August 28th at the Van Buren in Phoenix, Arizona. Tickets there's still some available. Look, every ticket is great. I can tell you from first-person experience, I've been to many shows at the Van Buren, including podcast recordings. It's great. It's a great space, but tickets are moving. If you want to get in, ballerslive.com.
And fun fact, Betz and I will be there as well. So
That's right.
we're going to get a lot of people from our Footballers crew, a lot of people that are Foot Clan members. So it should be a really, really good time. And I feel like this is in Phoenix. This will be like the biggest Phoenix show we've ever done.
Oh, by far.
Yeah. All right. Moving on.
Dynasty Rankings.
So we're going to look at these different tiers that I've found using our rankings in the Dynasty Pass. But before we do that, I just want to get y'all's opinions about Dynasty tiers because it's a little different than how we stat out players in the Ultimate Draft Kit.
Yes, it is.
Because in the draft kit, we have the projections. You can see the point projections. You can see, like, here's a gap. I feel like for Dynasty, we are guessing for a lot of players about generally where the cutoff area is, when maybe it's not a huge difference, or it's different league to league, or Betz and I talked about this last week. Like, the team that has JSN right now is probably jumping for joy. But there might be people out there that have JSN and their teams stink. And so the context of their team with JSN is very different than if you're a contender with JSN. And I bring him up because a year ago, he was right around wide receiver 12, if we're looking at Dynasty value. And now he's seen as universally a top 3 wide receiver in Dynasty. On the other end of the spectrum, if you would have tiered out these players a year ago, Brian Thomas Jr. would have been one of the first players we talked about.
Oof. Oof.
In
yes,
fact, if you would have traded those two players, like nobody would have done that trade a year ago.
No. You would have got JSN plus for Brian Thomas. The tiers are hard because in redraft, like Kyle said, it's about the points. We can see where the projections are telling us there is value to be extracted or players that we're going to avoid at ADP because we just don't think they're worth it. Tiers in Dynasty are like they're very market, which like we say it. Dynasty fantasy football is a market-based game. Everything is public sentiment. Like once you're in season and you're starting to get points and things like that, things can change around. But it's very difficult because you're projecting long term. And guys like Brian Thomas and Marvin Harrison Jr., these are players who skyrocketed way up because everything made sense. Like the runway was clear for them. Young, I mean, Marv didn't totally do it, but 808 as a rookie is not. It's not the end of the world. But then you have Brian Thomas's season where it's just like, how does this player possibly fail? He's young. He's the one on his team. And then absolute catastrophe of a season. So this is, when you're putting together as a tier, it can be very difficult.
For sure. And I think the other thing too is that Dynasty has so many seasons within the year, the calendar year, right? Like players have certain value in a Dynasty startup, which is kind of what I think of when I think of rankings and tiers. But then like, man, in season, like a veteran's value relative to his tier might be way more because he's actually producing. He's getting the target share.
Right.
You need him in your lineup, those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously that changes the equation. And then you get to the point in the offseason, like that veteran loses value immediately. So they're elusive. They change all the time. But they're fun to talk through because I think it's a good thought exercise for trying to forecast like who can move up and who can move down tiers and just thinking through the range of outcomes on certain players, which we always think we're really good at. And I think we're at least above 50% on this stuff. But as you said, the Brian Thomas Jr. is a perfect example of this game being a market-based evaluation on certain players. And it is so subjective that if you disagree, that's fine. And then that's going to work out sometimes in your dynasty leagues as well, whether that be in startups or trades. So I'm excited to break these down today.
Yeah, my last little note here is there's things like I don't know what I don't know, whether it's player stuff off the field that will change their involvement or...
Rasheed, stay inside.
Yeah, that one's hard in Dynasty because I don't think anyone knows where to rightly assess.
I literally
rest.
just moved. Like I have the rankings here in front of me that Kyle is, and I'm like, nope, I don't believe that anymore.
Oh, we got a live rankings update.
I just moved him down.
All
Yeah.
right.
Or like Tyreek Hill, or the one we always bring it back to, Michael Thomas. If you would have said, hey, by the way, this wide receiver is going to vanish from being maybe the 101 to...
Thomas is the craziest. I like the Brian Thomas plummet is wild. The Michael Thomas plummet of you're the number one. Him and Nugget and Juju were locked in top 3 startup picks. And then they were not.
So I have Juju on a team where I got the first 2 years. No, not still. No.
I thought you were saying you still have
but
him.
part of me wants
we did the bench discussion last week. That's the guy you're supposed to cut.
Part of me wants to keep him there just to remember. I had the first 2 seasons of Juju. All right. And after the second season was awesome. 1,500 yards. You think this is going to last forever. And I got nothing for him. Like eventually it just got to the point where I had to drop this player, but I'm just holding on to, I remember what he was worth value-wise to people, and now it's just gone. So this stuff changes over time. And then next year we're going to be adding in Jeremiah Smith to this mix that before he takes a snap, I'm just going to guess right now, he's going to be top 5 or 6 a year from now.
He's so good.
He probably will be because everybody's talking about him as a top 5 NFL draft pick, and we saw what happened with Marv when that was the case a couple years ago. So I think it'll be very similar.
Do you know what the Marv peak was?
In overall startup ADP?
Yeah.
Wide receiver 5.
I'd go even higher.
It got up to 3 at some point.
Yeah, there you go.
Whoopsie doozy.
That's another difficult thing of when you're talking overall rankings. And it's like, okay, a player that has never taken a snap, how do you compare them to veterans who have multiple years under the belt? And you know who they are as an NFL player because the discussions on Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Malik Nabers was, and I mean, you had people on both sides of the camp of who should be the better pick, who's going to be the better fantasy play. A thing I do remember about the time is people talked about, okay, well, Nabers could be better than Marv. He seems a little bit riskier just based off of his profile. It's like Marv is a big boy running big boy NFL routes. The thing about him is he can't fail. Maybe he doesn't return total value, but he can't fail. I don't know that I would call his career a failure in totality yet. He still has a lot of time to right the ship, but like as of these first 3 years, it is a failure. Meanwhile, Malik Nabers, like if you could trade Marv for Malik Nabers right now, I think everyone would sprint to the podium for that.
Right. I mean, people are offering you just a first for Marv. It's basically it. That's kind of the
Right.
market for him, and it feels like.
And that feels right. That feels like a fair
And
risk on both sides.
yeah, I feel like I have Marvin in a league. It's like I'm not trading him for a first. I'm going to hold out and hope and just suffer that I've gone this far with him.
I would sprint
Would
for
you?
a first right now.
You'd take the one.
Why would you not
Ooh.
reset? Why would you not reset on a player who potentially could actually do it for a guy that we keep making excuses for this far into his career? That's where I'm at.
I think it's fine. I would say if it's a back half first, I can say no, but I get it if it's like 105 or higher in this next year's
Yeah.
draft and you want to do that, that's fine. Let's talk about this first tier really quickly. We don't have to go too far into it. I'm calling it the untouchables because if I had one of these players on my team, there is no way I would trade them. If I had two of these players on my team, baby.
Shut up, Kyle.
Now, it is funny. So we have Puka, Jamar Chase, and JSN. And these are our wide receivers that we have in Dynasty. Mike has Chase.
So I have one of the big three. Guess which one I have ranked number one?
That's true.
Zero bias here.
There's not much to say here. There's a little bit of age discrepancy, but with Chase, it feels like he's going to play forever. And
Well, it's not just that Chase is my number one because of Joe Burrow. Like the Sam Darnold, it's an incredible story. Very happy for the man to, resurrect the career. It's just, can he do what Joe Burrow does? Will he ever even be asked to do what Joe Burrow does? And this is not an attack on JSN, but like the season went as perfect as it possibly could go for JSN.
Sure.
And guys, like he belongs here. I'm not making an argument to take him out of the top three, but guys have perfect years. And then that was the greatest. And you'll still get really, really strong fantasy years, but I think that was pretty perfect.
I mean, there's
what JSN.
There's a realistic chance that we just saw his best season,
yes,
which is crazy because he's so
is.
young, and you think there's more room to grow. But like you said, it was outlier perfect in terms of his yards per target.
Every
his
deep
target
shot
share.
was a completion.
I feel like I put on Red Zone every Sunday. It's all of a sudden there's another deep shot to JSN for 40-yard touchdown every single play. So I'm with you. I think regression is naturally going to happen, but that doesn't mean he's not a locked-in top asset.
What's interesting is looking at where this tier was a year ago, where JSN wasn't anywhere close. He was kind of ranked as a top 12 wide receiver, but we had Jefferson in this group. We had Nabers in this group. And a year later, would you guys agree? Like, I would not put those guys in this top three.
Well, Jefferson is just so tough because it's not his fault, but this is part of the game. Is who is your quarterback? Which is like I know Stafford just extended or something, right?
Correct.
My brain is mush right now. So you do, long term, the fact that the Rams took Ty Simpson it's just at least a positive step where you're not getting like part of the problem with Juju and then like this just the guys on the Steelers is they had no plan or they chose to not have a plan to replace Big Ben. And then you just go into quarterback purgatory, and it doesn't matter how good you are. You can't be an elite top 3 type of a player with a crap quarterback. You can still be good and solid for fantasy football, but if you're not locked in with a franchise guy, to me anyways, you'll never be at this top.
I think that's fair, and I think that's a good reason to keep him in the second tier. Obviously, he could outscore Puka, Jamar Chase, or JSN this season. So like redraft, obviously it's a different conversation. But for Dynasty, I still think I'm with you in terms of that. Just quarterback question mark. Is it Kyler? Is it a rookie next year? A different free agent? What have you? As far as Nabers, I know we kind of like have to ding him because of the ACL recovery and everything. I'm still such a huge believer in him as an NFL talent. And obviously, we're projecting him to start the season slow, whether it's on PUP or just not being 100% for the start of the season. I really think you're not going to get peak Malik Nabers until next season. So understanding that for this year for me is kind of how I'm approaching it, but that doesn't mean I'm not still in on him. So if somebody wanted to push him up into tier 1 because I think he's that talented, I think it's fair. And he's only 23 years old. I think that's fair, but I think the way that we have it now is pretty good with CeeDee, Justin Jefferson, Nabers, and Amon-Ra kind of rounding out tier 2.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll keep moving through some tiers. All right, we're moving on to tier 2, and if you want to see all of these tiers, we'll have an article on the website. We have the rankings found in the Dynasty Pass. If you want to pull out your app, you can see all of them there. But in tier 2, I'm calling them the wide receiver 1 studs. It's CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Malik Nabers, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, which feels like almost a disservice to him because he's maybe the most consistent wide receiver year to year.
Yeah, you are correct.
But all we're saying
and he
here
has
is
Goff. Like with my argument, Goff is locked in. Of all these guys, like, I mean, Malik, I'm with you, Betz, on I have no problem. If someone wants to put Nabers into tier 1 and say you can't get him off of my team, I think talent-wise that makes absolute sense. But you're putting a lot of chips in on Jaxon Dart truly being a franchise guy. Looks like it, but that's not a lot of data to go completely all in where you can end up with a Thomas situation.
right.
Yeah, there's just more risk with the Giants because of the uncertainty
Right.
on his recovery and Dart. So I think the way we have it is fair.
Yeah,
And offense, like the Harbaugh offense. What is
Matt Nagy, baby.
Matt
He's
Nagy.
going to unlock Jaxon Dart with those wide receivers in week 1.
Yeah,
Dude.
we've loved what Matt Nagy has brought to the table for many years in a row.
This tier 2 is interesting. You brought up BTJ because he was in this group last year. Spoiler alert, it's going to be a couple more tiers till we talk about him. But I wanted to bring up Jefferson as the interesting name because for a while, the debate was Chase or Jefferson, and that was like the dynasty conversation. And now we're kind of removed a little bit further. He's 27 years old. It was a really, really tough season last year when you get 140 plus targets and score only 2 touchdowns. It's like, oh gosh, like
That is insane.
it's one of 8 wide receivers in NFL history to do it. And there's some good wide receivers on the list, but like 84 catches for 1,048 yards and 2 touchdowns just shows you like how bad they were when targeting Justin Jefferson because
And like Jefferson wasn't Justin Jefferson last year. You had many drops of like every player. If you get a high target volume, you're going to have drops. So I don't actually
like Amon-Ra
I'm
is
saying-
the one we always bring up. It's like
right.
It's
Like
gonna
I'm not
happen.
moving Jefferson down. Oh, he drops, but he dropped some really important passes where like you had the struggles of 9 getting him the ball accurately. Well, then you had multiple times where the pass was good and it just bounced right off of his hands. You're like, oh man, Jefferson.
Do you feel like there is a buying window now for Jefferson? Because depending on where you stand on the Kyler conversation, like you have people that hate Kyler, think he shouldn't even be in the league anymore. You have people that want to give him a second chance. And so it does create this like discrepancy of like, what do people believe about Jefferson? And you could go in on and say, hey, this is still a top end tier 2 wide receiver. And I'd like to try to buy in this moment. Like, are you willing to do that, Betz, at right now?
I don't know what his cost is in a trade, if I'm being honest. Like, I haven't poked around in my leagues to try to get him, so I'm not really sure what it would take. I assume a young, productive wide receiver and a first at least, maybe 2 firsts, something like that. I think if you're a middle-of-the-pack team or a contender and you need an extra boost at wide receiver, I'm certainly trying to push the chips in and go for it. And Justin Jefferson, to me, is one of those guys who clearly would be somebody that can move the needle for your team and give you that league-winning upside. So I think I'm buying on that situation. I'm in the camp that obviously can't be this bad 2 years in a row for a player this talented. And we probably just saw the worst season we're ever going to see from Justin Jefferson from a fantasy standpoint. And I know Kyler's frustrating. I know there's some issues there. I just like going right back to Kevin O'Connell's scheme. We've had so many quarterbacks succeed. Even Carson Wentz was giving us like usable weeks in fantasy last year, which is so like the NFL season is so long. We need to remember Carson Wentz started games for this team last year and was giving Justin Jefferson plenty of targets. He was producing in those games. So it's like, man, can we just have Kyler not be JJ McCarthy? And I think good things are going to happen for Justin Jefferson. So yeah, I guess I am willing to see what it costs him to trade. I wouldn't fault anybody that is the Justin Jefferson manager that's still holding him at the same value we did a year and a half ago. And you might have to pay an arm and a leg to get him. And then maybe I'm saying, okay, I'm out at that cost. But yeah, he's at least worth poking around, I think, for in your leagues for sure.
Would you rather pay up for Jefferson or look at these guys that we have in tier 3 who look values all over the place, but we have them at tier 3. So we are saying we believe that they should cost a little bit less in a trade. Would you rather dip into tier 3 and hope that one of those guys next year we're talking about them in tier 2? So we're talking about players like I'm jumping around here, Kyle. Sorry. So it's like Drake London, McMillan, George, Olave, or Nico. One of those guys, do you want to kind of maybe pay a little bit less and take the hope that they jump up?
I think the only guy that you could maybe get for less, Drake London's going to cost a ton. Tetairoa, McMillan, people are very excited for. Obviously, Pickens is coming off a career season. I think the only guy that you might be able to get like for less than Justin Jefferson relative to those guys might be Chris Olave or Nico Collins.
I think Nico is at a point where if he feels kind of bland, there's name fatigue. I know he was hurt.
Yes, I
for
agree
sure.
with that.
I agree with that.
But you have 3 straight seasons of 1,000 yards. So if it's just coming down to cost, let's say Jefferson is, like if I had Jefferson, I'd want at least 2 firsts and something else. And I don't think people are willing to give that up. I think I get it from a cost standpoint. I think with Jefferson, like, do you remember when DeAndre Hopkins had that season where just like it was an insane amount of targets and it was the most inefficient Brock Osweiler crap ever?
Yep.
It was so bad.
Hopkins was done.
And then
like that's what the market said.
Teams up with Kyler, obviously like reset a lot of things and he was totally fine a couple years later. I guess it really does come down to how you think Kyler will hyper target him. I mean, this team still has Jordan Addison. They added Juwan.
Sure are making some assumptions that J.J. McCarthy doesn't win the job.
I love that Mike is still there, and also the part of
I
me
like this bit.
No, I like it because the whole world has turned against this man, and now I'm back on his team. I love it. I love that. Like he's in a corner.
I love that the world has turned on J.J. McCarthy in favor of Kyler Murray, a guy who the entire world had turned their back on. It's very funny to me.
It's a what have you done for me lately league, Mike. And JJ did.
I can tell you what Kyler did for the Arizona Cardinals lately. Jack squat.
Got him some nice draft picks. What's so funny about the Kyler situation is the last snap in an Arizona uniform is the play where he hits the ball off his face mask in the shotgun. Like,
oh, no, it's not, is it?
I'm pretty sure that's the last snap he took as a Cardinal.
That would be incredible.
I'm going to need to look that up. I need to vet this.
Oh, man.
Sensational.
At the end of the day...
Because he got hurt on that snap?
Yes, he didn't play from week 5 on, and that was the Tennessee game that had you guys on the main show after that week. Andy just pulling his hair out, being like, how is this an actual franchise?
Because it was impossible
for Arizona to lose.
That was the DeMarcado, Jonathan Gannon sideline situation. Kyler took the snap off the face mask. Yeah, that was it. That's the last time we saw Kyler in Arizona.
We all believe in Kevin O'Connell. It's almost like I'd want him to play quarterback for this team. He was an NFL quarterback, but we believe in him and scheming things up. So with Jefferson, he feels steady. I don't know if I'd love to pay the name price because he still carries that, right? It's not like in leagues, people all of a sudden like, oh, he stinks. But he dropped a tier. And last little name I got to mention because I feel like CeeDee Lamb almost like name-wise doesn't belong with this group. But production-wise, when he's on the field, he does. It's just we have George Pickens to deal with. I love CeeDee Lamb. I still think he's an elite wide receiver. But I think people are getting name fatigue from him as well. And they should.
Yeah, you get name fatigue combined with injury of last year, which when CeeDee Lamb was on the field, he was awesome. Like you had a weird ending to the Cowboys season where there was a couple games where the entire offense stunk. Like George had some duds. CeeDee had some duds. When I look at it in totality, I see a player who is being undervalued heading into this year.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite guys that, like, if you're going after a stud and you don't want to pay the top tier in a trade to get, I think CeeDee you can get for a little bit less than these other guys. And man, I think CeeDee's going to have an awesome year. So
I want to talk to you guys about Tetairoa McMillan.
Yes.
Because of the 3 ballers, I am the lowest. And this has absolutely zero to do with Tetairoa McMillan. It's my stance on to be in the top tiers for Dynasty. You must have a franchise quarterback who is a top tier quarterback. What is the path that you guys see for McMillan taking the jump? Because he was, I don't have all his numbers in front of me. Let me pull them up. But he dominated the target share. 25%. I get that could go up. Some guys are up near 30, so there is room for growth there. But at the same time, Bryce Young is like a 3,000-yard passer, and they will have him this year. Did they pick up his option? I don't think they.
Yes,
did they?
They did.
Okay,
but then they're working on extensions. Basically, it's cheaper for them to pick up a 5th-year option and then basically figure out from here, what do we do?
Sure. But so it's okay. The career of Tetairoa McMillan is the next 2 years as Bryce Young. And because I think this is part of the equation of, do you think McMillan can jump up into tier 2 or higher? He's tied to Bryce Young. And then if that doesn't work out, now you're in quarterback reset, which often goes very bad for a few years as you're trying to figure it out. And by then you're on to the contract extension timing. So it's just how do you guys see it playing out where McMillan really can pay off and make a jump?
I think it's interesting that we have him next to Drake London because they've kind of been comped to each other the most since McMillan's come to the league. And London, the route has not been that clear, but let's say it happens in a similar way where this team is still figuring out their franchise quarterback. And through 4 seasons, London's been a top 12 wide receiver just once. It's actually been more hit or miss than we realize. I want to find players that I know this player could see 150 targets. There's no question on this offense he could see 150. And that's kind of where McMillan is for me.
McMillan?
Yeah, McMillan could see 150 targets. There's very few players. Now, that's probably being hyperbolic, but 130, 140, that's very much on the table the way this team is constructed. And he's just so young that I can afford a year or two where he ends up being a top 15, top 20 wide receiver. But your question is, can he tier jump?
Yeah.
I think the only way he tier jumps
because
is
if you're buying McMillan, if you're going to trade your assets to get McMillan on your team, built into that trade is going to be a tier jump from whoever has them on their team. And the only way you're going to pry them away is projecting the jump and overpaying right now.
Yeah, maybe the route that you're saying is if you're going to overpay, this might not be the time to do it because of the season that he's in, which is I can't see this team taking a tier jump just as an offense at all. But target-wise, just volume, I feel so safe with him.
I think the way that you guys are framing this makes a lot of sense where, I was talking about the start of the show, in the offseason when you're doing a dynasty startup, these young, productive, early NFL draft pick wide receivers, historically the hit rate is very, very good. Tetairoa McMillan checks the boxes from the efficiency standpoint, the draft capital, everything he did as a rookie. We project him to be a very good pro. But then you get in season and it's okay, Bryce Young is still frustrating. Dave Canales wants to run the football. All of a sudden, this player that you spent a top 10 wide receiver pick in a startup draft in is giving you wide receiver 22 production in fantasy points. And that's good. You need that on your roster. But in startups, he's being taken as if a guy that is going to be a potential league winner at some point very soon. And I'm more with Mike where it's and Drake London is a perfect comp for this, right? Because nobody has ever questioned Drake London's talent. He's been very, very good, but you need touchdowns to be a top 5, top 8-ish receiver in fantasy. And as long as Bryce Young is the quarterback, I'm just not sure we're getting that. And so if you do project it to be a frustrating kind of good but not elite 2 years here, I don't know that I'm willing to shell out top dollar in a trade to get Tetairoa McMillan, even though I think he's a super talented player. This is kind of one of those things where dynasty players have gotten more savvy in that we know what to look for in hits at wide receiver, and it's the yards per run, it's the draft capital, it's all these things. But then we're so tied to that being this is right and the other stuff is wrong. But it's man, at the end of the day, you got to score fantasy points. And I think I'm more on Mike's side where it's this will be frustrating. He's very talented, but I see a very similar path to Drake London where we're just waiting to get a quarterback and waiting to get somebody that can unlock that top 5 season. And I think it's going to be a couple of years at least.
Like Marv's rookie year was 885 and 8, and McMillan was just over 1,007. I mean, of not world beating difference of
Right.
of 200 yards and then 6 points from the touchdown. So points wise, not all that off.
Right.
McMillan at least functioned as clear wide receiver one stuff. Like one of the stats I was looking at is when 3 wide receivers are on the field, it's usually harder for a wide receiver to earn a target. There's just more competition. He was actually way better. He had a 26% target share, 31% first read target share. So he's
that's because Xavier Legette's out there running wind sprints.
they have a wide receiver out there.
Every time Legette steps on the field, they just immediately look at Tetairoa McMillan.
That would be a fun stat. Just say when Legette is on the field, how does it boost other people's target shares? What does it do? What does it do for the offense? So I think his value feels safe, but I think where we kind of landed is I don't want to buy into a tier jump for him. He feels safe in this tier 3, maybe moves down a little bit if it's a bad season, but I'm excited about his long-term output, his target earning ability. The other wide receivers in here, we mentioned London, McMillan, Pickens, Olave, and Collins. And my little thought is it would not shock me. In fact, I'm kind of guessing that a year from now, Jordyn Tyson is the Saints wide receiver I'd rather have in Dynasty than Olave.
Ooh.
Kyle, what's wrong with you?
I love Olave. You know that.
Yeah, that's what I
mean.
I
was just going to bring up Olave in the Tetairoa McMillan argument of I've seen Tyler Shuck essentially start 9 games, and I'm already far more secure in the idea of my fantasy wide receiver being tied to him than Bryce Young.
I'm fine with that. I think
he was throwing for 250 a game.
You're just
We
dealing
need the
with
touchdowns to go up, but it's just like I said, first 9 games.
But who's going to see 30% of the pie? I'm pretty sure McMillan's going to see 25 to 30%. At least with Olave, I have to throw in the variable that he was very touchdown fortunate at the end of the year. They went on a little run.
Yes, he was.
With Shuck. And I've always loved Olave, the player, but I just think Tyson is different. I think Tyson is Justin Jefferson level different in how he moves, how he gets open, and the way that he works in modern day NFL. So there's just some variables there with the Saints where it's I could see myself a year from now saying Tyson's in this tier and Olave moved down.
It's possible.
Because 250 a game, that's 17 games, that's 4,200 yards, 4,261. That's enough for 2 guys. That's you need, like I said, you do have to have the touchdowns come up. But yardage wise, that's if it's focused to Tyson and Olave, which by the end of the year it should be. It's gross, but Vele could really ruin things for our target distribution in New Orleans. But if it does shake down to those 2 guys, I think that at least what Shuck had showed his rookie year, that would be plenty if that's what he's going to give us.
And I think to your point, Mike, too, you look at some of the Saints' moves this offseason. Obviously, Juwan, you've been a truth there, Mike, I know for years. I've always loved Juwan. He's kind of had a niche role as a big slot type receiver, but you follow their moves. Oscar Delp in the draft, Noah Fant in free agency.
Yeah, I think our time has come and gone.
It was good. Good little
It was
run.
a great run. If you had him on waivers, man, plug him in a couple times. He's great. But I think if you follow their moves, they're opening up the window to be following the NFL and saying, let's try some more multi-tight end sets. And if it is just Olave and Tyson on the field, their ability to earn targets over Noah Fant is clearly going to be elite. So it's man, let's get some of that stuff going here with Shuck and see what happens. So I like that take, Kyle. I think that's definitely possible. And Olave is a guy too where it's the injury concerns were there for 2 or 3 years in a row, and they're not just gone.
Injury and age of McMillan, you're talking almost 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the other one is what are you guys doing with George, aka George Pickens? Because I am very bullish. He's in my top 10, and the other 2 ballers, he's at right around 11 for them. And he is terrifying because he is not officially linked to Dak or a top tier quarterback. I think that the odds are he doesn't end up as a Dallas Cowboy long term unless there's a real shakeup, involving probably CeeDee, as they like say, we'll go to George instead. But his talent level, I think, like if I had to take from tier 3 just the player of Drake, McMillan, Olave, and Nico, I would put George at the top personally.
Talent-wise.
So yes. So it's a little bit of there is some very much of he might be a boat in here, because next year George is going to make so much money.
Yep.
So much money next year. And it might be a loser who shows up to pay the cost for Pickens.
It's a really unpopular
you know
loser that's like,
you know what I mean?
I know exactly
a throwaway team where George Pickens, and I would fault George zero. Like, he was a second rounder. You go get that shmoney, brother. But hopefully he ends up at a place where you have a competent quarterback and not a Bryce Young level of quarterback where you're like, oh crap, here we go. We're just stuck forever at wide receiver 15.
I have George in a league, and I've thought about cashing out so many times this offseason because I just know, like, what he did, it's going to be really hard to repeat that because it was awesome. Like, and the spike weeks were awesome, and everyone remembers the big plays, and a lot of them were when Lamb was off the field. So, but at 25 years old, I feel like no matter what season you're in, if you're rebuilding or if you're contending, it's like, this is a valuable player. So just cashing out for the sake of like cashing out doesn't make sense when he could repeat as a top 10 wide receiver. Like top 5, I'd probably bet against that repeating the rest of his career if I had to bet. But I think you're fair where we have him, like we at wide receiver 10 in a startup. Like I'd want him over Olave. I think you can debate it over Collins. But yeah, the next landing spot, you are guessing. And if you want to cash out and just say, like, I think it's going to be worse for him, then I think you're going to get fair value. Hopefully you get like 2 first or a first and a really young stud.
Yeah, you factor this year in. If you're going to trade George, because he'll be great this year. Even with CeeDee, if they're both healthy, all 17. Like, if both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens are healthy for 17 games and Dak is their quarterback the whole time, I think they'll both be top 12 wide receivers by the end.
It feels a lot like those years where we talked about, all right, the contract's coming up for T. Higgins. Is he going to chase the money?
Is somebody going to pay him? Like the Bengals.
And you'd be like, I kind of just hope he stays. Like, wouldn't it be great if they just keep doing this? And if he just stays in Dallas, it will be awesome. Financially, I'm not sure if they can make that work or not. But yeah, the uncertainty, it's scary to like trade a player away after they were so good. But at the same time, this is a market-based game. And so if somebody would like to pay top dollar for the year that he just had, I'd at least be willing to listen.
Those are like the explosivo wide receivers that when they go off, it's not like 101. It's like 180-2.
Yeah.
T. Higgins and Pickens. Like those are the weeks like in DFS or those kind of formats. Like they completely win you the week. They're awesome. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll keep moving. All right, we are moving on to tier 4 at wide receiver. I'm calling it a wide range of outcomes because once you get to this level, there's a lot of guys that I feel hopeful and it kind of expecting them to have a wide receiver 1 type season, but we've kind of seen these players ebb and flow. So like this is Garrett Wilson. We have a couple young guys in here.
I just figured it out.
Garrett Wilson?
No.
Okay,
George.
Okay.
Rashee Rice. The Kansas City Chiefs are done.
Is George going to be the wide receiver 1 in Kansas City?
George goes to Kansas City and we open it back up.
Everybody, stop what you're doing. Trade whatever it takes.
Go get George.
To get George.
I just saw it. The vision during the break while you were hearing from the sponsors, I figured it all out.
I love to hear it.
Book it.
His value would skyrocket. So I would love that. And yeah, it will be a different Chiefs team a year, 2 years from now.
I mean, my guys, George,
dude, Ken and George, Kemba on the same team.
Walker.
Can they handle each other in the locker room?
Oh, they'll be best friends. Best friends. And they will just get so many love letters from me.
Another one's
in your locker, George.
It's from that Mike guy again. He keeps sending us stuff. All right, so let me tell you about this tier because we have Garrett Wilson, Carnell, Tate, Emeka Egbuka, DeVonta Smith, and Jordyn Tyson. So we have two of the rookies in this group, which I think is an interesting conversation about it. But then we have Egbuka, who last year...
They're in this group because we're all freaked out.
That's exactly
what just happened to us.
Especially in Dynasty rankings, you get to a certain point, if you have projections or whatever, that you're like, oh man, here's the median outcome, but man, this player could go so many different directions here.
Correct.
A year from now, Egbuka, would it shock if he was top 10?
No.
Would it shock you if Tate was top 10?
No.
Tyson?
Wouldn't shock me.
What's funny is I think it would shock me a little more, even though I prefer him to Carnell Tate. So
it's provocative. It's shocking. There's some players here that I want in Dynasty. DeVonta Smith, I feel like, is somebody we've talked about over and over again. Jason's talked about a ton. He's under contract for 3 more seasons. He's a little bit older. He's the oldest in this group, almost 28 years old. But they're essentially treating him like a wide receiver 1. And we think he can be that. He's seen that kind of target share.
Seeing him in this list of names, he is, other than I'm taking Rashee Rice out of the difficulty ranking.
Right.
Smith is really hard. Like he'll turn 28 this year, and this is his true chance to be the number 1. Yes, we have all our split data of, well, when AJ Brown misses games, for a couple games here and there, but ask Juju what happens when your superstar leaves the team and now you have to be the number 1 guy, and a defense can try to scheme you out as the number 1. You don't get the helpfulness of Batman being on the field. And no offense to Dontavian Wicks.
Wow. You're about to say something
even
negative about him?
Or Mekhi Lemon is like Lemon is not proven, and Lemon archetype wise, we have to see how that actually even works. But it's like a guy who's going to turn 28, and the first time where all of the weight is on his shoulders, his frail, tiny, skinny body shoulders. I'm just dunking on him for no reason. I love Smith, but it's like, are you that? My ranking is very confident in him, but just talking through it on the show, is it worth the price of admission to say he's going to do it? Because if he does it, he'll jump up to tier 3. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think any outcome has DeVonta Smith as a tier 4 wide receiver next year. Either he makes the jump up or he moves down a little bit.
I would say the only thing that prevents me from agreeing with you, Mike, is just the age, and that's kind of how Dynasty players are for these non-elite. And I'm not saying DeVonta Smith can't have an awesome season this year. I think he's going to be really, really good. But even if he has a great season, when we turn the page to 2027 and you look at his age, which he will be 28, soon to be 29, are you going to draft that guy the same way that you would draft Justin Jefferson, who's done it for years, or CeeDee Lamb, who's done it for years at an elite level? Probably not, right? So I think it's really important to kind of think through this from 2 different lenses and different games that we play. In redraft, I'm super in on DeVonta Smith. I think he's going to be awesome. In Dynasty, where it's a market-based game, there is a chance that this is the peak value we'll ever have for DeVonta Smith because A.J. Brown is gone and because there's excitement around wide receiver 1 season. But it's like, man, you look up in a year and you're like, oh, he's almost 29 years old. Like, I got to get out from this guy. And people think that way so quickly because of age and how we play this game. So that's my only thing with DeVonta Smith. I think if you're a contender and he's like your wide receiver 2 or 3, like, you should feel awesome. But if you're somebody that's like, I don't know, I'm middling of the pack, I'm a bottom 5 team, I can get something huge for DeVonta Smith. Like, I'm probably doing that in a Dynasty league.
I love the player. I love the talent. And then having him on so many teams over the last couple of years, it's been good to maybe very good, but it's never felt great. And I think that's like the expectation now is like, I think if I buy into him, he will be great this year. And you might end up with like a wide receiver 18 season, which is good. But like, I think we're all wanting him to be great for fantasy purposes.
Yes.
I also think just systemically too, like you think about the Eagles offensive line has been so good for years. Like they're kind of, Lane Johnson is closer to the end than the beginning. Obviously, he might be his last year, and the offensive line had major injury issues last year. Those guys contemplated retirement. I think there's a world that exists where the Eagles offense looks so different just a year from now. So I just think there's a lot more risk dynasty-wise on a guy like this.
We had the debate about Tate or Tyson.
Tate or Tyson.
About these two. And then I want you to look at your projections really quick, Mike, because I think for all of these, Tate's going to win on median projections this year. Like, who's going to see more targets this year?
Right. Okay.
I'm assuming it's going to be Tate. Would you say that, Betz?
Targets, Tate or Tyson?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Median outcome, yes.
I think it's easier for me to project Tate to see more targets.
Sure. But
Targets,
you also have the pace,
quality of target.
And the pace of play with Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
Just more play volume for the Saints.
What about receiving yards?
Probably Tate.
Touchdowns?
Probably Tyson.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think a year from now, there's room for both of these guys to move up a tier or two. I think there's definitely that. And then let's say that they have a middling or even an airball year. If they get hurt, they're going to be right here. They're not going to move.
Yes. Yeah, they will hold their value.
Okay.
Unless they completely fall on their face.
I want to move to tier 5 because these are really interesting names. I'm calling it, can they be a top 12 wide receiver? And I say that because most of these dudes have been a top 12 wide receiver. It's Lad McConkey. We've seen it before. Luther Burden, who I feel like everybody's baking in the jump. Zay Flowers, who was a wide receiver 1. T. Higgins, we know he can be. A.J. Brown. And then Rome Odunze. So both Bears wide receivers are in this tier. These are our top 24 wide receivers. We've talked about the Bears guys a lot. Anything you want to say just to dunk on Jason before we move forward?
What I will say is the Luther Burden, it's difficult because we have seen so little of it. What's hard, and this is a fantasy football and a life difficulty that I will throw out. Like, as one who felt that they were at the forefront of the Luther Burden bandwagon as far back as like last preseason, I was on the show of like, I think Burden ends up as the wide receiver 2 by the end of the year. I don't know who the number 1 is going to be between DJ Moore or Rome, but I think that Burden he's on his way and he's going to kick somebody out. So I was like, to have loved a player so much, go through the season, the difficulty at the beginning, but then all the success at the end, especially success in terms of the advanced analytics that us nerds love so much. It's hard to not be like, whoa, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Be like a top 20 guy. It's difficult to do that, and I'm not going to do it. This is not what I'm saying. Like, this is all gas. This is pedal to the metal. But I can see where a world where it goes wrong.
It wouldn't surprise you.
The perfect comp for this, Mike, is you're driving the car off the cliff, pedal to the floor in Alaska. Yes. That is the level of speed that we're talking about. You're off the cliff.
I'm hitting the ramp at full speed. Do I Evel Knievel and like go flying off of the motorcycle? I don't know. Do I stick the landing? Maybe.
We're going to find out
I'll
soon.
tell you what I'm not doing. I'm not jumping ship for Rome. That's not happening.
What type of price would you pay for Luther Burden? If you guys wanted to acquire him. If you're all gas, I mean,
Mike's got
you
him
still have to be financially responsible, Kyle.
Kyle's got him in Dino Jr.
I just want to see what he's
The problem
worth.
with Dino Jr. is I'm not the captain of the Dino Jr. ship. That's Jason.
Oh, that's true.
So he would much prefer Rome. And Mr. Loveland is the biggest hurdle for both of these guys. I think it's more than likely that Loveland ends up as the number 1 target for the Bears.
What's so fun about Dynasty? What's so fun is that every single player on your team, especially if they've gained a little steam, like Burden's gained some off-season steam,
right?
There's just something in all of us like, I just want to know what you're willing. What do you think? What do you think about my player on my team? And what are you willing to give me? And then I can just say, no, never. I drafted this player, so he's worth double that. That's how this game works. So there's the Burden Odunze debate. What about McConkey?
I just moved him up.
Yeah, baby.
Betz has been doing some McConkey research in the weeds, and I'm looking at the Chargers every day as it is.
We finally got some positive signs of life where the offseason has really been murky, at least the way I have analyzed it. Like we've been very pro huge at his price. This is not because it's the question of, okay, if they really do move to some more 2 tight end sets with Ladd McConkey's size and build and Hard Dog being in charge, are you 100% sure that Ladd McConkey will be the wide receiver 2? He should be. But that's the problem. It has kind of been he should be this guy, and if he is, then fantastic, wheels up. Like you're telling me McConkey can't earn targets over huge if it's just 2 wide receivers on the field. It's just the unknown and kind of worry that maybe he's not that second guy. But the publicity and the hype train has recently been more positive for Ladd McConkey, who's he's a high quality wide receiver. It's hard to explain away what happened last year.
Yeah, Keenan Allen did Keenan Allen things, unfortunately.
Right. When a guy who's now picking up his AARP card.
Well, you could have just said one of the greatest of all time. Instead, you just
Keenan Allen. I'm on your side with Keenan Allen. I have loved him. He's great. But when you're in year 2 coming off of the season you had, and then an old guy shows up and is like, hey, youngster, why don't you clean up my helmet, my pads, because I'm going to go out there and dominate. And it's just, like I said, it's difficult to explain that away.
For
and
sure.
Just be like, oh, no, Keenan's gone. Everything's back to normal. Everything is great now.
Yeah, I think this conversation is fascinating because you can talk yourself in or out of this player, and you can kind of see both sides of the coin, which I think you just need to call your shot, whether it's in a startup or a trade. What do you believe? For me, most of the answers to these questions come back to the more obvious thing. And it's if I just look at this wide receiver depth chart, okay, Ladd McConkey, so impressive as a rookie. Quentin Johnson, been good, getting better every year. Yards per target is increasing all 3 years. But this is a guy who, in huge, who's averaged 3.6 and 3.7 catches per game. Can he be a volume wide receiver? I don't know. He at least hasn't been. And Ladd has at least shown that ability. And I'm not saying he is this year's JSN, but there's a lot of comparables in just the conversation to JSN from the last 2 years to what happened this year, where the conversation was, can he play in 2 wide receiver sets? Can he even play on the outside? And to put numbers to it, JSN's routes run in 2 wide receiver sets or fewer prior to this past season, 14 and 44 in 2023 and 2024. Ladd is already well above that, 53 and 71. So he's at least done it in a limited capacity. And we've had these conversations with these players. It's can he do it? Does he fit the scheme? And then you get worried about it.
We had the offense change.
And the offense changes, and then their role changes.
The coordinator got kicked out of town.
Yep.
Because he clearly was wasting JSN's talent. And then Giro, the bromance had to end. I can't imagine what that conversation, the heart-to-heart and the amount of man tears that were shed during that conversation.
So many hugs.
But it's with McDaniel coming in, it could be positive. That last year could have just been a complete Greg Roman mistake and oversight, and he just liked the veteran. And Ladd McConkey, there is a world where that exists, and then Ladd McConkey completely takes flight, and he's the 1,150-7 as a rookie type of player, and we just had a little hitch in our giddy up, and now the Ladd McConkey career is back on track.
For sure.
Mike McDaniel has this personality where he just gets obsessed with the tactical advantage that nobody else in the league can see. With Tyreek and Waddle, and even Mostert and Achane, he was just
and then the Jonnu.
It's so cool because who does he latch onto on this team? You kind of look at it and go okay, these are good wide receivers. Who is a great one? Because Tyreek and Waddle were great wide receivers. Does he view Ladd that way? And if he does, some of the stuff that Betz has been bringing up is he could see this massive jump where it's I want to feed this guy. I want to feature him because we know he can get open at will. That's the best part about Ladd McConkey. So a year from now, would you say Ladd is here or moves up a tier, Betz? If you had to put your guess.
I'm calling a move up. I think it's going to be an awesome year for Ladd.
Okay. I like it.
If there's anybody that's going to be willing to feature Ladd McConkey, it's going to be the guy wearing joggers every Sunday with the skinniest ankles you've ever seen, okay? Mike McDaniel, he'll do whatever he wants, man. He's cool. And it's cool to get Lad McConkey the ball.
Lad who?
Lad McConkey.
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 Now
we're
when
gonna
Keenan
emphasize
signs, when Keenan signs, is that when you trade for him? Or is that when you run?
He's actually signing with Washington. I forgot to tell you.
Who, Keenan?
Yeah,
oh,
Keenan.
Dang, did you have the vision too?
Yeah. No, my real take is I think they're going to sign Steph Diggs. Instead of
Chargers? Or Washington.
Washington.
Okay. Thank goodness.
Okay, cool. I want to finish with one more tier because there's a couple interesting players. Tier 6, I call it So What Do You Believe? And it is a wide range of guys from Jalen Waddle, Jameson Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Mekhi Lemon, Brian Thomas Jr., DJ Moore, Casey Concepcion, and I added him in at the end out of just like charity, Christian Watson.
The fact that we have, not by we, I'm not speaking of myself, Casey Concepcion with absolutely no future at the quarterback position ranked above Christian Watson is just nonsense.
Well, it's just what do you believe? And I personally think Casey Concepcion.
I believe the Browns are toast.
I just think he's a different cat.
Kyle believes Deshaun Watson is going to bounce back this year.
It could only get better.
It can go lateral.
So there's a lot of players here. Like I was even comparing where Jameson was. You think about his dynasty trajectory, where he's been. It's just been a roller coaster where you could have victory lapped Jameson Williams and said, like, this dude is like done. Like, definitely not going to be a Lion. And then he gets the extension. Marv has just been this slow decline. It's not a roller coaster. It's just like you're coming in. You're not even going for a ride, man. It's like wide receiver 25. And then Thomas has been wild. We talked about him a little bit. Those three players, just looking at their trajectories, interesting. But we can finish off by talking about Christian Watson. That's where we can land this plane because
we don't have to. We can talk Jameson Williams getting usurped by Isaac Tisla if you want.
That is not in the range of outcomes for anyone.
It's in the range of outcomes for my dynasty team, Kyle.
And therefore possible.
In your touchdown-only league, he will crush. He will be good.
Just saying that. I've heard a lot of positive things about him this offseason. Not much on Jameson Williams.
He's not really a work ethic guy, Jameson Williams. He's not really an offseason dude.
Some are saying.
But for real, though, I do need to land the plane here with Christian Watson. He's never run 300 routes in a season.
Oh, my God. This again?
And I think the price is higher than this now.
You know what? You sound like Andy when it's like Devontae Adams has never had 1,000 yards. He didn't have 1,000. You're like, okay, he was just under and was still very good. It's cleared for Watson, man. Who are you scared of on the Green Bay Packers? Taking targets away from Christian Watson.
They spread the ball around. They don't care.
But those guys are gone.
No.
The leftover guys are gone. There's a big three now.
The way that their offense functions is they're not looking for somebody to be an alpha. They're like, they really could not care. And if I had to pick one, it's Tucker Kraft is the main alpha of the team.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
I knew you couldn't.
Yeah, Tucker Kraft is awesome. I think, so Christian Watson's fascinating, right? Because there is two sides of the coin where it's like, he's never really done this, but they just paid him. So maybe he will. And then you look at their moves, and I think they're kind of telling us they believe he can, because they did let Dontavian Wicks go, and they did let Romeo Doubs go, and it's all kind of setting up. I think the way that I'm viewing Christian Watson, because there is such a wide range of outcomes in Dynasty, is like if I've had him and I've lived the frustration of the last 3 or 4 years with the injuries and the wide receiver rotation and all that sort of stuff, and I'm not counting on him, like, okay, maybe if somebody is hot and bothered for him, I can get a first for him or something like that,
That's
right? Where it's like,
point.
I don't need him in my lineup. But if this is a startup and he's going well past where I think his value could be a year from now, like I might be interested in getting him. So I think it's largely dependent on like where you're at in your dynasty team's life to kind of view him. But I'm more on the side with Mike. I think it's going to be a great year for Christian Watson. We just need more routes. We talked about that with George Pickens for years. Like, get this guy more routes on a per route basis. He's always been good. Get him just more routes. What if Christian Watson runs more routes?
I've been calling him really expensive Quentin Johnston, who's been on the field, scoring more touchdowns, and better on a per, like, just like
and the show.
Somebody's been more valuable.
And the show. We're done.
Oh, sorry. He's more expensive Alec Pierce. Sorry. I meant that.
Stop, Kyle.
My goodness.
Stop it.
All right. That is going to do it for
But see, the thing, like, you could mix and match. I think the Romeo Dobbs gone is so huge. Like, Golden's not a target earner. Wasn't a target earner, remains that way. And it's like, and they have a very distinct role for Jaden Reed. And you're like, this is all you have been, and like, this is all you're going to be. I mean, I just see a world where I see a world for the Packers where Jacobs is like his efficiency, it continues to go down as he ages, and they don't, unless the Marshawn Lloyd breakout, or not breakout, just was contribution. We'll put it that way.
The takeover. Yeah, I hear you.
I know, not a takeover. Just, can Lloyd even be on the field? This is like they're not loaded at the running back position. You know, your count. How old is Jacobs? Is he 29?
Yeah, he'll be in his age 29 season.
So he's 28.3. Okay, it is players like Jacobs, where who was still solid last year, but I mean down to 4 yards a carry. The thing about those types of running backs, when it's gone, it's gone. And we've seen so many players in the NFL come and go, like Josh Jacobs, where it seemed like, no, he's going to be one of those guys. He's going to be one of those guys that can carry on. But this will be year 8 for Josh Jacobs. And then me saying this, like, he has his off the field stuff, but like on field, I think Jacobs is going to have a great year. I'm just saying, when you're playing Dynasty like this, you have to see where the paths can possibly go. And I see a path where Watson just has a massive year.
I want the team to function a different way. Like, I think there's room for him to be an alpha 1. I think the team has just never chosen to do that with Love and with the way that they've done their wide receivers pretty much ever, which is frustrating for fantasy.
Well, they had the one year where Jordan Love was, what was he? He was quarterback 5.
Yes, so he was super efficient.
4,100 yards and 30. And the thing about Jordan Love, and I believe the advanced bear it out as well, he can still do it. Like, he's still a good downfield passer. He just hasn't had to do it. And like, what is the structure of the Packers defense? You know, oh my God, what's his name?
Micah Parsons.
Parsons. Like, when is Parsons ready? Because when Parsons was gone, that was a very, very different defense at the end of the year. And if you're going to start the year without Parsons, and then Parsons has to ramp up, just throwing out ways that things could go wrong for the running game for the Packers, and they have to lean more on Love. And I think that Love is capable should they have to call on him.
I agree with that take. And just to kind of hammer this point home, they lost their defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, who's now the head coach in Miami. So there are ways where it's like, you can't just keep giving Josh Jacobs the ball for 3 yards and set up third and manageable. Like, you have to be aggressive and let Jordan Love carry this team. I think he can do it. In 3 years as a starter, he's averaged 7.2, 8, and 7.7 yards per pass attempt. He's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in football. Maybe that comes down over a bigger sample size with more pass attempts, but my take is that he can, and you can load him up with volume if they want to. We kind of just Matt LaFleur to just do it.
Yes.
And he hasn't yet. Maybe he does this year.
Yeah, so that big season, it's like no one saw a 20% target share. It's like, oh, Jordan Love's quarterback 5. And it's like,
but you had all the other guys.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, the way that the team functioned is just like, they don't need everybody. Like, the Chiefs have done the same thing. It's like, they don't need wide receivers other than Tyreek or Kelsey to see this massive target show. And it just ends up being a blah. So yes. I think he can spike, but Kraft would be the one I would bet on.
It's
probably the better bet.
Kyle will do anything to avoid saying anything positive about Christian Watson.
I'm just projecting.
Look at him
this
smiling.
For Watson. I'm projecting it could go completely sideways
for sure
for Christian Watson.
If he's my wide receiver 4, I would be excited.
Yes. If you were my 3, I would be very excited too.
Okay.
As your wide receiver 2, okay. That's scary.
That's where we're at. All right, you can check out all the rankings, fantasyfootballers.com. Check out the Dynasty Pass if you want to analyze your draft, analyze your team. And we'll talk tiers again next week.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.